June 1940. A British soldier charged into battle playing bagpipes, carrying a Scottish broadsword, and shooting a longbow. He killed a Nazi with an arrow, captured 42 prisoners with just his sword, and said, "Any officer who goes into action without his sword is improperly dressed." This is Mad Jack Churchill, the most insane soldier in WWII. Act 1. The man who refused to be normal. Before we talk about the bagpipes and the sword, you need to understand something important about John Malcolm Thorpe Fleming Churchill. He was completely, utterly, magnificently insane, and he knew it. And he loved it. Born in 1906 in British Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, Jack Churchill grew up in a military family. His father was a civil engineer. His childhood was normal, by British colonial standards. But Jack? Jack was never normal. As a teenager, he became obsessed with medieval warfare. While other boys played cricket, Jack was practicing archery. While others read novels, Jack studied Scottish Highland battle tactics. He graduated from the Royal Military College Sandhurst in 1926 and joined the British Army. Standard military career ahead of him, right? Wrong. Jack got bored with peacetime military service. So in 1936, he quit the army and became a male model and movie extra in Hollywood. Yes, really. He appeared in several films including The Thief of Baghdad, 1940. He was also a competitive archer who represented Great Britain in the World Archery Championships. But then September 1939 happened. Germany invaded Poland. World War II began. And Jack Churchill had a realization that would make him a legend. "This is my chance," he said to a friend, "to fight a war the right way." What's the right way to fight a war according to Mad Jack? With a sword, a longbow, and bagpipes. When his friend asked why bagpipes, Jack's response was simple. Because an officer who doesn't announce his presence is just sneaking around like a common criminal. When asked why a sword in the age of machine guns, Jack said, "Any officer who goes into action without his sword is improperly dressed." He rejoined the British Army in 1939 as a lieutenant. His commanding officers took one look at him and knew, this man is going to be a problem. They were right. But not the kind of problem they expected. Act 2. The Longbow Kill May 1940. France. The British Expeditionary Force was in France, fighting the German invasion. Jack Churchill was commanding a unit near Lepinette. The situation was desperate. German forces were advancing. The British were retreating. It was chaos. Jack's unit was tasked with holding a position to cover the British retreat. They set up in a defensive position with a clear view of the road. Jack stood up, pulled out his longbow, and his men stared at him. "Sir," one soldier said, "What? What are you doing?" "Waiting for the Germans." "With a bow?" "Of course. What else would I use?" A rifle." "Like the rest of us?" Jack looked offended. "That's no way to fight a war." German soldiers appeared on the road, approximately 30 of them, advancing in formation. Jack knocked an arrow, drew the bowstring, aimed. "Sir, they have machine guns." Jack released. The arrow flew 100 meters and hit a German soldier directly in the chest. The German dropped instantly, killed by the last recorded longbow kill in military history. The other German soldiers looked around in confusion. What had just happened? Where did the shot come from? Why did their comrade have an arrow sticking out of his chest? Jack's men opened fire with their rifles and the Germans scattered. After the engagement, Jack's commanding officer called him in. "Churchill, I've received reports that you're using a bow and arrow in combat." "Yes, sir." "Got a kill with it, too. That's not standard issue equipment." "Neither is this," Jack said, patting his Scottish broadsword, which he wore strapped to his side at all times. "Churchill, you're fighting World War II, not the Battle of Agincourt. Sir, with respect, the Germans don't seem to know the difference." The commanding officer had no response to that. Act 3. The Bagpipe Commando, December 1941, Norway. After the evacuation from France, Jack volunteered for the Commandos, elite British special forces. units that conducted raids on German-occupied territory. This is where Mad Jack truly earned his nickname, Operation Archery was a raid on the German-occupied Norwegian island of WWII. The objective? Destroy German positions, capture prisoners, and generally cause chaos. Jack was assigned to lead one of the assault teams. The night before the raid, Jack laid out his equipment: Thompson submachine gun, standard issue; Scottish broadsword, not standard issue; longbow and arrows, definitely not standard issue; bagpipes, absolutely not standard issue. His men watched him prepare. "Sir," one commando asked, "why are you bringing bagpipes to a raid?" Jack looked genuinely confused by the question. "How else will the Germans know we've arrived? We're supposed to be stealthy." Stealth is for people who lack flair. On December 27, 1941, British commandos landed on WWII, and Jack Churchill did something that German soldiers would talk about for the rest of the war. As the landing craft approached the shore, Jack stood up at the front, pulled out his bagpipes, and started playing March of the Cameron Men while under enemy fire. German soldiers on the shore were so confused they actually stopped shooting for a moment. Was this a military assault or a parade? Jack jumped off the landing craft, still playing bagpipes, and charged toward the German positions. His men followed, not because they understood his tactics, but because they were too stunned not to. When Jack got close enough to the German positions, he threw down his bagpipes, drew his broadsword, and started fighting hand to hand with a sword. In 1941, against soldiers with machine guns, 1. German soldier actually dropped his rifle and tried to run because he thought he was being attacked by a ghost from the Middle Ages. Jack killed him with the sword. By the end of the raid, Jack had personally captured 42 German prisoners, not with his Thompson submachine gun, with his sword. He held them at sword point and marched them back to the landing craft. When asked later how he managed to capture 42 armed German soldiers with a medieval weapon, Jack's response was, they were so surprised by the sword that they forgot they had guns. Psychological Warfare. Act 4. The Escape Artist. Yugoslavia. Jack's insanity reached new heights during operations in Yugoslavia, where British commandos were supporting Yugoslav partisans against the WWII. Germans. Jack was leading a commando force on the island of Vis. They were tasked with raiding German positions on the mainland. During one raid, Jack's force of 40-plus men was ambushed by a much larger German force. They were pinned down, running out of ammunition. The situation was hopeless. Jack stood up, pulled out his bagpipes, and started playing Will You No Come Back Again? His men screamed at him to get down. Jack kept playing. Then something bizarre happened. The German soldiers stopped shooting. Not because they were confused, though they definitely were, but because some of them were crying. Will ye no come back again? Is a Scottish lament. It's hauntingly beautiful. And even in the middle of a firefight, the Germans recognized beauty when they heard it. One German officer later said in an interrogation, "We thought he was mad. We couldn't shoot a madman playing music. It seemed unchivalrous." Jack used the momentary ceasefire to organize a retreat. His men escaped. 0 casualties. But Mad Jack's luck eventually ran out. May 1944, another raid in Yugoslavia. Jack was leading a force that got separated from the main group. They were surrounded by Germans. Outnumbered 10-1, Jack drew his sword. Prepared for one last stand, a grenade exploded near him. He was knocked unconscious. When he woke up, he was a prisoner of war. The Germans had captured Mad Jack Churchill. Act 5. The prisoner who wouldn't stay captured. The Germans took Jack to a POW camp. They were actually excited to have captured him. "This is the crazy British officer who fights with a sword," one German officer said. "He's famous. The Führer will want to interrogate him personally." Jack was sent to Sachsenhausen concentration camp, not as a regular prisoner, but as a high-value POW. The Germans wanted to study him, understand his tactics, figure out why this madman was so effective. Jack had different plans. Within 2 weeks of arrival, He had already started planning an escape. "How are you planning to escape a concentration camp?" another British POW asked. "Through the front gate," Jack said, as if it were obvious. September 1944. Jack made his move. He had observed that the guards changed shifts at exactly the same time every evening. During the shift change, there was a 90-second window where the lighting near the fence was suboptimal. Jack used those 90 seconds. He walked, not ran, walked toward the fence, calmly, as if he belonged there. When a searchlight swept near him, he ducked into a shadow. When it passed, he continued walking. He reached the fence, cut through it with wire cutters he had stolen from a maintenance shed. Walked into the forest, he was free. But here's the insane part. Jack didn't immediately try to reach Allied lines. Instead, he started walking toward the Baltic Sea. His plan? Steal a boat and sail to Sweden. He made it 200 kilometers before he was recaptured. The Germans couldn't believe it. They moved him to a more secure camp in Austria, Sachsenhausen-Oranienburg. Jack escaped again. This time, he made it to the Austrian Alps. He was planning to walk all the way to Italy. The Germans found him again. They were getting frustrated. "Why do you keep escaping?" a German interrogator asked. "You know we'll just catch you again." Jack's response: "Because staying in a prison camp is boring, and I have a war to win." The Germans kept him under much tighter security after that. Jack remained a prisoner until May 1945. When Allied forces liberated the camp, he was furious. "Those damn Yanks," he said. "They ended the war before I could finish." Act 6. The War That Wasn't Enough, May 1945. World War II in Europe ended. Most soldiers celebrated. They could go home. The war was over. Mad Jack Churchill was depressed. "This war ended too soon," he complained to anyone who would listen. "I barely got started." His fellow officers tried to console him. "Jack, the war lasted 6 years. You fought on multiple fronts. You captured dozens of prisoners. You survived being a POW twice. Yes, but I never got to have a proper sword duel." Nobody knew what to say to that. So Jack did what any reasonable person would do. He volunteered to fight in the Pacific Theater against Japan. By the time he arrived in Burma, the Americans had dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan surrendered. Jack Churchill's response when he heard the news: "If it wasn't for those damn Yanks, we could have kept the war going another 10 years. Most soldiers, thrilled the war is over, they can go home. Mad Jack, furious that he doesn't get to fight anymore. Act 7, Peacetime Madness after World War II. Jack faced a problem. What does a man who loves combat do during peacetime? Answer: whatever he wants. Jack stayed in the British Army, but peacetime military service bored him, so he found creative ways to entertain himself. In the 1950s, he became an instructor at a military training school in Australia. His teaching methods were unconventional. One time, to teach his students about infiltration tactics, Jack snuck into the base at night, broke into the officers' mess, rearranged all the furniture, and left a note: "If I had been the enemy, you'd all be dead." He also became obsessed with surfing. Yes, surfing. In the 1950s, Jack Churchill became one of the first people to surf on the River Severn's tidal bore in England. At age 50, "Why are you surfing at your age?" someone asked. "Because I'm bored and this is dangerous." Perfect combination. But the most Mad Jack story from peacetime came in 1952. Jack was traveling on a train from London. The train was crowded. Jack was sitting by the window. At one stop, a briefcase was thrown out of the train window. Jack looked out and saw a man on the platform looking panicked. Jack immediately deduced someone had stolen the briefcase and thrown it out the window to an accomplice. Without hesitation, Jack opened the train door, while the train was moving, jumped out, rolled to absorb the impact, grabbed the briefcase, and chased the thief through the train station. He caught the thief, held him at sword point. Yes, he was still carrying his sword in 1952. Returned the briefcase to its owner. The police arrived. "Sir, you jumped out of a moving train?" The train was barely moving. Only about 20 kilometers per hour. That's still incredibly dangerous, Jack shrugged. I've done more dangerous things before breakfast. Date: The Legacy of Madness. Jack Churchill retired from the British Army in 1959 with the rank of lieutenant colonel. He spent his retirement years surfing, traveling, restoring steam engines, and occasionally teaching archery. He never stopped being Mad Jack. In the 1970s, during an interview, a journalist asked him, "Do you have any regrets about your military career?" Jack thought for a moment. "Yes, one regret. What's that?" "We never got to have a proper cavalry charge. Horses, swords, bagpipes. That would have been magnificent." "Sir, you fought in World War II. There were tanks, aircraft, machine guns." "Exactly. No style, no flair. Modern warfare is so impersonal." Jack Churchill died on March 8, 1996, at the age of 89. His obituary in the Telegraph read, "Jack Churchill, who fought throughout the Second World War armed with a longbow, bagpipes, and a Scottish broadsword, has died." But here's what makes Mad Jack's story even more incredible. Every single thing I've told you is documented, verified. True. The longbow kill? Confirmed by multiple witnesses and military records. The bagpipes in combat? Photographed and documented. The 42 prisoners captured with a sword? Official military report. The concentration camp escapes? Verified by camp records and fellow POWs. Mad Jack Churchill wasn't a myth. He was real, and the most insane part? He was effective. His unconventional tactics worked. His psychological warfare confused the enemy. His absolute fearlessness inspired his men. Military historians have studied his tactics and concluded Mad Jack's insanity was actually brilliant combat strategy. By being unpredictable, by doing things no rational soldier would do, he kept the enemy off balance. Germans didn't know how to respond to a man charging them with a sword while playing bagpipes, and in that confusion, Jack won. Final reflection. There's a quote attributed to Mad Jack Churchill, though its authenticity is disputed. People are always asking me, "Jack, weren't you afraid?" And I tell them, of course I was afraid. But I was more afraid of being boring. That sums up Mad Jack perfectly. He could have fought World War II like every other soldier, with standard equipment, following standard tactics, being safe and rational. But Mad Jack Churchill refused to be ordinary. He fought WWII on his own terms, with medieval weapons, with bagpipes, with absolute disregard for what was normal or sensible, and he survived, and he won, and he became a legend. Today, Mad Jack Churchill is remembered as proof that sometimes the craziest approach is the most effective approach, that rules are meant to be broken, that tradition matters, even in modern warfare, and that if you're going to fight a war, you might as well do it with style. As Mad Jack himself would say, any officer who goes into action without his sword is improperly dressed. Rest in peace, Mad Jack. The world will never see another soldier quite like you. Want more incredible WWII Stupfi warriors? Watch the complete series, Simo Haiha, Audie Murphy, Lyudmila Pavlichenko, and more.